Welcome to the Success Sensei Podcast for anyone interested in success, happiness, and balance. We'll teach you how to be a black belt at life. And now, your host, former professional fighter, multiple world champion, entrepreneur, and investor, Robert Devan.
Bowing in. This is Robert Devan, the Success Sensei, helping you to win at life one kick and punch at a time. Episode 331. Your life in 20 years.
It's the Success Sensei Podcast main event.
Your life in 20 years. In 20 years' time, 20 years from this point onwards, what way is your life going to be? What's it going to look like? What are you going to be doing? What do you have? What way do you think? What problems do you have? What problems have you overcome? What goals have you achieved? Who is in your life? Who is not in your life? Where do you live? How do you live? What's your lifestyle like? I've chosen 20 years because I really want you to zoom out on your timeline, the timeline of your life. So many people are concentrating day to day, some hour by hour, or definitely on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis at most. And people who are into goals, they tend to look very short term. They tend to look, just a year. Even to set out something like a 5-year plan. When people hear that, they can snigger at the thought of you setting out a 5-year plan. And here we are talking about a 20-year plan. What is your life going to be like in 20 years' time? If you can't even imagine where you're going to be or what your life is going to be like in 20 years' time, if you can't visualize how the things that you're doing right now are going to project forward over the course of a couple of decades. Listen, this could have been 40 years' time. I chose 20 years' time because pretty much all listeners, no matter what age bracket you're listening at, you should be able to envision that you've got a further 20 years in front of you. And that includes any people in their 70s listening to me. You can imagine yourself into your 90s. I don't think I have too many listeners in the 90s to project, but if I do, you can project into your hundreds. You get the idea. But for other people, the 20-year projection, it could be even long. It could be 30, 40, 50, 60. But we'll go with 20 years because it's a good sizable number. And it's to knock you out of your short-term thinking. Now, keep in mind, the majority of goals that we set out, we underestimate the length of time that it's going to take to achieve them. So here we are 20 years after I've set out some goals that I thought were going to be 12-month goals, and I'm still trying to achieve certain ones. So that's normal. Things can take a hell of a lot longer to achieve than you think they're going to be. So in 20 years' time, I just want to put it to you right now that the problems, all the things that you're worrying about, the small things especially, all the many small problems you have, all the many small worries that you have, they're not going to exist. So you are automatically putting too much time and effort today and wasting too much energy in worrying about all these little problems and little worries that aren't going to exist in your life in 20 years' time. Yes, you'll have replaced them with new worries and new problems. Well, what does that tell you? That we have far too much emphasis in these areas in our lives. You do need to be able to visualize and see where you're going. Because how are you going to know, how are you going to get there if you don't even know where you're going? So do take the time. If you have to close your eyes and think about how you see yourself in 20 years' time, or if it is an exercise that you want to do on paper, by all means. In 20 years' time, you'll be delighted you set the foundation for future success. So all the good things that you're doing for yourself, for other people, for planet Earth, for your career, for your creative juices, for your legacy, whatever, all of the positive things you're doing now, I guarantee you that in 20 years' time, that future version of yourself will be delighted that you started those things, you started those projects. In 20 years' time, you'll be glad you took risks. So the risks that you're avoiding taking, the risks that are scaring you, the risks that you don't want to take, all the procrastination that's getting in the way of those risks. In 20 years' time, you'll be delighted that you took those risks. In 20 years' time, you'll be sad that you didn't try harder. You'll be sad that you didn't do more. You'll realize that to get where you've gotten to was probably too easy. You'll wish that you didn't add more problem solving, more difficulty, more obstacles to overcome in your life. And I know that's a concept that you might find difficult. You might struggle with that one right now, because right now in this moment in time, you're worrying about you're sweating the small stuff. You're worrying about the small things. In 20 years' time, when you've forgotten about all the small things and you've forgotten about all that hardship and you are where you're at and you've got what you've got, you will think, God, you had the capacity to do a bit more or so much more. In 20 years' time, when your health, maybe, again, this depends on what age you are, but certainly even further into the future, depending on what age you are, further into the future, we'll say, when your health is declining, you'll be very happy with every healthy decision you made earlier in your life. Keep that in mind. Stuff that might seem pointless now or, futile, or it's not going to make any difference. You'll absolutely be delighted that you did make the efforts when you're in your health declining years. You'll be delighted you put the time and the energy into your relationships, especially if you're getting to the more declining years and you're feeling that bit more lonely. You'll be delighted that you put time and effort into relationships when you weren't lonely, when you didn't need people. When you need people, that isn't the time to decide, right, okay, I'm going to ramp it up now. You should have been doing it all along. You reap what you sow. You'll be absolutely delighted in 20 years' time that you invested in yourself and your continuous learning. You'll be, if you can keep amassing knowledge in lots of areas, in your hobby areas, in your, not just your business life, not just your work life, but even in understanding how you, yourself, your personality, your brain, your body functions. If you continuously, and it should be continuous learning because there's plenty to learn. No one can learn it all. But if you can continue to learning, if you still have a thirst for knowledge, that will compound over, a 20-year period. So even though I've titled this Your Life in 20 Years, I might have talked a little bit beyond the 20 years, but you know what I'm getting at. It's important to step back. It's important to, number one, minimize some of the worries and some of the problems that you are over worrying about. And it's important to, really put into place all the important things that will accumulate and will expand and, will grow over the next 20 years. We're all living too much in the moment. I know all the self-help and self-development is saying, live in the moment and stuff, but there can be too much living in the moment. Sometimes it's important to step back and to see how it is you want your life to work out? How do you see? What way do you see yourself speaking? What way do you see yourself presenting yourself? What confidence do you have? What motivation? What ambitions do you have? What did you discard that wasn't that important? What notions did you have to outgrow? What people did you gravitate towards? What kind of a life did you build for yourself? And right now, thinking about a further 20 years, what kind of a life would you want to have in 20 years' time? If you had a magic wand, if you had the ability to be able to construct the perfect scenario for yourself in 20 years. Now, in 20 years' time, you're going to need to do this process again, hopefully. So have a think about more long-term. Don't be afraid to set out long-term goals, long-term ambitions. Life isn't a sprint. It is a marathon. Hopefully, we're all going to be around for a hell of a long time. Let's not waste it. Let's not waste today. Let's not waste tomorrow, this week, this month, this year. We're far too concerned with current events. We're far too swayed by, how the media is telling us we need to be feeling. So make sure you have your short-term goals are very important. Your medium-term goals, your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan, and your long-term goals, your 20 years plus plan. Maybe you're constructing a 100-year family legacy plan, family dynasty plan. Who knows? Whatever it is that helps you to navigate towards your goals and towards the things that are important for you and help you ultimately live your best life, then absolutely bring it on. Thank you for listening. I'm Robert Van, the Success Sensei. Life is a fight you can enjoy and win. Bowing out.
This has been the Success Sensei, fighting the winning fight. So add us, subscribe, like, and comment. Keep those hands up and keep moving forward.